tragedies in their wake. But activism, coupled with the obvious failures of prohibition, has made a difference. The social justice movement, ordinary people have been required to go to extraordinary lengths in order to secure any sense of justice and equality in the face of this institutionalized repression and malice. Activists have taken many risks over the years, putting their jobs and families on the line, and in some instances their freedom. It's because of the contributions of thousands of volunteer community activists that the most powerful government in human history is in reactionary mode, haphazardly struggling to respond and adapt in real time to a changing legal and political landscape. Finally, after so many years, the dark, ominous cloud of prohibitionist dominance and persecution, the failed approach of treating a public health problem as a criminal justice problem, is starting to fall. Unprecedented advancements in the cause of legalization and normalization have been taking place, and there's been a subsequent media frenzy that has swiftly emerged, eager to exploit just about any story about cannabis, even positive ones. I used to pride myself on keeping a scrapbook list of every cannabis-related news article in the 80s and 90s. Later, I continued the process by keeping a list of links to digital pot-related news stories. I simply had to give that up a few years ago, because since the passage of I-502 and Measure 64, the media floodgates have opened and such a raging torrent of cannabis-related media has been unleashed that I simply can't keep up with it with my Google News alerts. For the longest time, in fact, as long as I can remember, news story headlines about cannabis have invariably employed the pot joke double entendre. Is legalization just a smokescreen? Do Americans have the munchies for reform? Are legalization efforts going up in smoke? I always viewed this phenomenon as one more level of subtle marginalization, of denigration, as the cannabis issue has traditionally been relegated to ha-ha status by those who have placed themselves or whom society has placed on some pedestal of mainstream authority. It's all been a part of a concerted culture war that prohibition has been from day one. If you use pot, you're supposedly a second-class imbecile who's a slacker, a deadbeat, or a family embarrassment, be it an unwashed, unemployed hippie, an eccentric Rastafarian, or the tattoo artist who lives in the trailer park down the street. But things are changing as a new meme is advancing rapidly. One of the cannabis entrepreneur, the business person, seeking to change the status quo through economic activism. Which leads me to today's interview. My guest today cut his business teeth at Rolling Stone magazine, later becoming associate publisher and president of Spin magazine, where he moved from the magazine world to the interactivity world. He then became senior vice president at Time Warner Cable and later AOL, where he served as senior vice president of interactive marketing. He moved to Seattle in the 1990s, where he founded the Marijuana Business Association. His name is Dave Rhines, and he's joined me today. Welcome, Dave. How are you, my brother?
Very well. Thank you, Vivian. I appreciate being on here and I appreciate the setup. I'm looking forward to this discussion.
Well, thank you, brother. You emerged on the scene and things have been exploding around you. Why don't you quickly tell us about the Marijuana Business Association, how it got started and why?
Sure. Thank you. We started the MJBA, as we call it, 3 years ago. So right after the November 2012 elections legalized recreational or adult use cannabis here in Washington and in Colorado. And as a longtime business guy, I saw that in order for this fledgling industry to succeed, we would need to have the kinds of business infrastructure mechanisms and support that would allow these new industries and new players, new businesses to get started in a vacuum. For while marijuana use has been popular in this country for half a century, the businesses have been mostly underground. They've been in your garage. They've been in your backyard. They're little closet grows. And as such, they haven't had the same kind of discipline that most businesses have.
You have a history at many mainstream institutions, Rolling Stone, Spin, Time Warner, AOL. In that level of business, there's kind of a formula that is used. How different is a marijuana business from that general form? How different is that from the kind of traditional mainstream mechanisms of business? What other challenges do the pot businesses face?
Yeah, well, this is a small and medium-sized business revolution. The legalization of cannabis has taken many of those underground entities that we talked about and brought them from cottage industries, from mom and pop kitchen table industries or businesses into real startups. And as such, many of the same challenges that you might have if you were starting a Dunkin' Donuts franchise or if you were starting out and trying to create a bakery are going to apply here. So it's, first of all, getting money. Then it's finding real estate, managing employees, building your product, differentiating your brands, communicating to your marketplace, and then operating cost effectively. Those are all disciplines. The challenge, of course, comes here in the cannabis world, even in legal states like Washington and Colorado and Oregon, where we do not have access to the same capital markets, meaning you can't get a bank loan for your cannabis business. You can't get access to traditional government-supported institutions. And in many cases, your taxation is not as advantageous as if you were not in the industry. So you have
and you're pretty much, you're specifically referring to 280E, right? Preventing
that's right.
Businesses from filing federal taxes and declaring their operating expenses.
That's right. It's in part 280E, but it's other things as well. You know, many of here in this country, right, if you've been watching the presidential debates, you've seen many on both sides of the aisle lauding the great American entrepreneur, that engine of job creation and local reinvigoration of economies is the small business guy. And in fact, what you've seen here in legal cannabis is literally tens of thousands of new businesses being created and tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands approaching new jobs being created, even in this constrained environment. However, we don't have the same kind of access to the Small Business Administration loans, or your local Chamber of Commerce probably isn't embracing you. The Main Street isn't embracing the cannabis business yet in most cases. So we're still fighting local zoning, and we're still fighting what I call the last mile, which is the cultural acceptance. So even if there's not a rule or a law or a regulation that prohibits your business from access, oftentimes there's a social stigma, which means that you are not given the same considerations.
So in some ways, the market is butting up against the old boys network.
Well, it is, and
the legal challenges on top of it.
That's right. So I think it's both. And I believe that the legal challenge will sort itself out and is sorting itself out. You now have federal politicians like Earl Blumenauer in Oregon who are leading the charge. You even have presidential candidates on both sides of the aisle saying in national televised debates that they were pro-medical marijuana, or even, in Bertie's cases, with a wink and a nod, giving us the I'll probably sign the legalization if it were in my power. Even Hillary Clinton, who has been on the fence, signaled and expressed the benefits of medical marijuana. So you've seen that political discourse has changed. It takes a long time to unravel federal law. I believe that will happen. In my mind, what's even more interesting is that local mile. And we at the Marijuana Business Association believe that that's an economic discussion. I want to talk about jobs. I want to talk about employment opportunities. I want to talk about new tax revenues. Oregon in the first week of legal cannabis generated $11 million. You've got Colorado last month generated $20 million in tax revenues. And in fact, Colorado has generated so much in new tax revenues that they just are having an election about what to do with that surplus. Do they give it back to the public, or do they put it towards education? So while cannabis taxation is not the great panacea, the dollars and jobs that are resulting from legal cannabis are certainly assuaging the concerns of mainstream that the sky would fall if, in fact, we rolled back prohibition.
We are talking to Dave Rines from the Marijuana Business Association. We're going to take a quick pause for the cause because there's flaws in the laws here. Word from our sponsor. We'll be right back on Cannabis Radio.
Time to roll out for the people that let us hemp present. Hang loose. We're coming right back.
MJWellness.com, the largest medical marijuana community in the world. Connect with thousands of patients, doctors, industry leaders, and businesses through shared personal experiences along our worldwide network. Discover new therapies and benefits with content tailored to you. Come grow your network on MJWellness.com. You're not alone. Your wellness matters. learn, live, and thrive. Check out mjwellness.com today.
Your connection to quality cannabis insurance services is spelled K-A-E-R-C-H-E-R. That's Karcher Insurance. We have worked with ventures like cannabis for over 60 years. We're proud to represent over 50 companies with tailor-made cannabis plans for owners just like you to insure your product, your plants, and your pursuits. K-A-E-R-C-H-E-R spells out their full-service insurance services ranging from commercial to bonds to personal, from life to health, and more. Contact the team at KarcherInsurance.com and let our experience work for you. That's K-A-E-R-C-H-E-R Insurance.com.
Contact Karen and the team at Karcher Insurance at 1-844-421-3560. That's 844-421-3560.
Cannabis Confidential with Dr. Dina. Candid.
I want to give you the inside story.
Captivating.
I want to introduce you to my kind and amazingly talented friends.
Compelling.
We get to meet some of the most amazing cannabis activists and warriors around.
Listen in as medical marijuana pioneer Dr. Dina shares never-before-heard stories, chats with cannabis insiders and celebrity friends, and provides invaluable perspective and insight into one of the fastest-growing industries in the world.
I want to share with you what was once confidential information. Let's expose the truth, discuss the issues, and learn the facts.
Cannabis Confidential, only on CannabisRadio.com.
We're back to Hemp Present, only on Cannabis Radio. Now, back to our headstrong Emperor of Hemp, Vivian McPeak.
And we're back on Hemp Present on CannabisRadio.com. I am talking to Dave Rines from the Marijuana Business Association. David, legalization in Washington and Colorado is already generating tens of millions of dollars in taxes and many thousands of new jobs. Alaska, Oregon, the District of Columbia are also rolling out their recreational markets, and other states, including California and Nevada, are poised to flip here in 2016. Has momentum reached critical mass? Can this movement be stopped at this point? What do you think?
No, I think we have reached what Malcolm Gladwell called the tipping point. You know, if you look at public opinion, it had to reach a supermajority well before 2012, before it was manifest in elections. So what you're really seeing now is a lot of pent-up demand and really a lot of frustration that it's taken this long. I can add to that list Ohio. I grew up in the Midwest, and to think that Midwestern states like Michigan and Illinois and Ohio and even Kentucky are fighting the legalization fight is really encouraging. We always thought legalization was primarily a West Coast phenomenon. That is not true. So you're seeing places like Nevada, which will certainly go legal, and California in 2016 will be what I like to call ollie oxen free. We'll have close to 80% of all Americans living under some legalized cannabis. And at that point, it will be unstoppable.
Can you talk about your media network, MarijuanaNewsNetwork.com and Marijuana Channel 1 on YouTube, and your extensive social media network? Who drives all of that messaging, and what's the goal with these projects?
Yeah, thank you. You know, it was interesting. I was listening to your intro, and you talked about just trying to keep a list of all the links and tear sheets over the stories of what was going on. Well, in much the same way, the MJBA 3 years ago, we started MJ Headline News on Facebook, literally just to chronicle the news that was evolving. It was kind of the Huffington Post for cannabis, if you will. And so we started just following those, liking and sharing it on MJ Headline News. What I saw, I wanted to see, number one, is could I aggregate community around that? Would anybody care about those stories, and would they comment? Almost overnight, it went from 0 to 1,000, 2,000, 5,000, 10,000. Today, it's got 158,000 followers on just MJ Headline News on Facebook. So then after that, we said, hey, could we start doing some original reportage and migrating from social network, from Facebook onto the web? And so we created MJNewsNetwork.com, and we began to parse all of that news into articles, meaning put it into buckets where there was legal news or business news or event news, lifestyle, celebrity news. And so we did that, and that immediately the traffic started going.